Hello, and welcome to I Am Dad Podcast with your fatherhood authority, Kenneth Braswell. 30 minutes of wisdom, information, resources, and nuggets to help you on your fatherhood journey. Or maybe you're just curious and want to hear some real talk about fatherhood, family, and the minds of men. Well, guess what? We got you too. Sit back, grab your pad and pen, and maybe even bring a little something to sip on. Enjoy 30 straight minutes of fatherhood, family, and fun with the Fatherhood Authority, Kenneth Braswell.
Welcome to I Am Dad Podcast. I'm your host, Kenneth Braswell. Thank you for joining us for another episode as we are in the throes of the fourth season, y'all, and everything is moving very quickly. Our numbers are up via FeedSpot. I Am Dad Podcast is number 5 amongst 725 fatherhood-related podcasts around the world. I'm extremely proud of that. I think that it is because not only people are listening, but they're also engaging in the various platforms that I Am Dad Podcast is aired. And so subscribe. I've been pressing that this year. I need to make sure that you guys are doing that. If you're going to listen to me for 30 to 45 minutes and the button sitting right there in front of you, push the subscribe button. It helps with our algorithms. It helps the program to begin to move out there in spaces that I don't know it's living. And I know that as a result of the number of inquiries that I get from people around the country in various spaces that are looking to come on the show as a guest. And so I know it's resonating out there. So I just want to make sure that we continue doing that. But today, I am honored to welcome 3 phenomenal scholars and thought leaders who have dedicated their careers to reshaping the narratives of fatherhood. Dr. Brianna Lemmons, Dr. Tasha Alston, and Dr. Latrice Rollins. Collectively, these trailblazing researchers have transformed the way we understand Black fatherhood, family dynamics, and father-inclusive policies. Dr. Brianna Lemmons is an assistant professor at Baylor University and the founder and president of the Black Female Fatherhood Scholars Network, where she uplifts Black fathers through research, education, and training. Her work explores the predictors of non-resident African-American father involvement and the impact of fatherhood on child well-being. Dr. Tasha Alston is an assistant professor at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine and a leading voice in the fatherhood research. With expertise in social work and educational psychology, she has spent over 25 years uncovering how fathers influence child development, maternal health, and family well-being. She is the author of African American Fathers Involved in the Children's Education and co-editor of Health, Parenting, and Community Perspectives on Fatherhood. Dr. Latrice Rollins is an assistant professor at Morehouse School of Medicine and the director of the National American Child and Family Research Center. Robert Woodson Johnson Foundation Culture and Health leader. Her work focuses on father engagement in health and human services. As an editor of Engaging and Working with African American Fathers and Health, Parenting, and Community Perspectives on Black Fatherhood, she is at the forefront of advocating for policies that strengthen father-inclusive policies. These 3 powerhouse scholars are not only shifting research, but also influencing policy and practice to ensure that Black fathers are recognized as vital contributors to their families and communities. And in this conversation, we're going to explore their research, their personal insights, their work, their awesomeness, their power. We're going to do it all today on I Am Dad Podcast. How y'all doing?
Doing well.
Good. Well.
Here we are. I thought it was going to be difficult. It's hard to get people together, but when you try to navigate bringing 3 influential people on the same stage, I thought it was going to be difficult. Y'all made it real easy on the brother, and I appreciate. I have more problems with one person than I have with 3 people trying to get them on, and so I appreciate all of you guys coming on. We start our podcast very intimately. I love to bring the audience into your personal space just a little bit in this particular platform by asking you all to share your daddy story. Share it from whatever perspective you want to share it from, whether it is your own relationship with your father, your baby daddy, your husband, however you want to tell your daddy story. Give us your daddy story.
Who do you want
No
to
matter.
start?
Go ahead. You go. Since you started talking, go for it.
Once I started talking. So yeah, Latrice Rollins, and I am a daddy's girl all day. I'm the only child, so I'm his only child. So I am pleased to be daddy's girl. I think that my relationship with him has influenced a lot of what I do. And it is a reason why I go so hard for fathers, whether they are in the home or out the home. My dad did not live in the home with me, but is just as influential as if he was, right? So everything that I do is kind of thinking through that lens that there's a child who really loves their dad, regardless of the situation that they're in, and would want their dad to have access to as many resources and services just as they would want their mom to be the optimal parent that they want to be in their lives. And so it's kind of been my mission to make sure that practitioners, programs, policies think about these dads and think about the children whose lives they're in, and the lives that they're really important to their dads. So it's like that is really what has inspired me personally to work with dads.
Okay.
And I am Tasha Alston. I agree with Latrice. My father was very much involved, although he didn't live in the home. He was always present, always engaged, and more importantly, always there for me, regardless of not living in the home. What I also think is important is even as I was coming up, I had my father, but I also had my uncles, I had cousins, I had father figures within the community and within the neighborhood. And so collectively, my father's presence and his engagement and the presence of father figures that were in my family within the neighborhood and within the community showed me the importance of fathers and the contributions that fathers make. And so, me, I've always been very passionate about really bringing forth those contributions and challenging the narrative, not only on Black fathers, but also Black men, in making sure that Black fathers and fathers in general have the same resources that mothers have. Again, within Black families and Black communities, we understand the importance of Black fathers. We understand the importance of Black men. And so our goal collectively is to advance not only the contributions, but to show the importance and the power of Black fathers and Black men.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Dr. Lemon.
Yeah. So similar to Dr. Rollins, I consider myself to be a daddy's girl as well. And so a lot of my work comes from a strengths based perspective in looking at what fathers contribute to their children and families and the positive ways in which they involve themselves with their children and families. For me, I really have had a heart in my work for non resident Black fathers because I watched my father function in this role while living in the home with my sister and I. I also had several siblings that did not live in the home, and I saw my father struggle. With interacting with their mother and trying to be a very present father, but also experiencing many obstacles and many barriers to his role as a father. And I knew from living with my dad what kind of father he was. I knew, and still is to this day, and I knew the efforts that he wanted to make, but I saw his struggle, and that inspired me to really want to provide a space for telling the stories and narratives of so many other men like him that want to be there and present, but just don't necessarily have the support in which to do so. And so my work has come from this very positive lens and wanting to challenge the narrative as it relates to non-resident fathers, but also just fathers in general.
Mhm.
Really wanting to challenge those stereotypes that we know are out there and present with regard to so many Black fathers. And so that has really been the impetus for a lot of my work is my relationship with my own dad and
Mhm.
and helping to tell his story.
Mhm. Thank you for sharing that. I don't know if you all get this as often as I do, but people are always trying to figure out my trajectory into this work, how we got here. They always think that there is a design academic pathway to doing what we're doing. And as much as I tell them, no, there isn't. My design academic pathway was life. That's how I got here. Talk to me a little bit for each of you, how you got to where you are today, because it was not orchestrated, I'm sure, from the beginning. Some point you got up and be like, this is where I am and this is what I'm going to do. Talk about that journey.
Right. Yeah. There wasn't a job that said, if you're interested in fatherhood research, you're interested in working with fathers, apply here. And I didn't really know how strongly I felt about it until, like you said, confronted, right, with life and with those various challenges. So I started working for the state of Georgia in child support, and just seeing that there was a lack. There was a lack of regard. There was a lack of resources. It just really angered me, some of the perspectives that not only employers, co-workers, judges, lawyers, the kind of perspectives that they had on fathers. And so I'm like, no, there has to be something. So there was the Georgia Fatherhood Program. So I'm like, I got to transition out of this
Mhm.
to something to help. And so I went to the Georgia Fatherhood Program, and I think it just lit a fire, being around those other dads, being around other fatherhood practitioners who are now just cornerstones and leaders in the field. And it's just been on since then.
Mm.
And I'll say, based on what Latrice is saying, along with my own experiences, the same. So my background is educational psychology and also social work. And many moons ago, before they even had the internet, I was a community social worker and going into homes and working with families. And what I found was, as we were working with families, we weren't including fathers, which was nonsensical to me. We were working with families and working with children, and fathers were very much engaged and very much involved in the lives of their children and families, but we weren't including them in the treatment plans. We weren't including them in the work. We weren't engaging fathers in the conversation and communication. And so for me, I found that to be problematic, again, because knowing in our community how involved fathers are, even when they do not reside in the home, and knowing the importance of fathers, and knowing that if we're collectively working towards strengthening families and collectively working towards helping children achieve their goals, we should be including fathers within the process. And so that's where the process started for me. And so during that time, I really said, I'm going to focus. Again, there wasn't a clear path, but just that fact that they weren't including fathers really led me to begin to want to do research and work that engaged fathers and included fathers, and to better understand research to incorporate fathers and to partner with fathers in the work. So again, it's been a very, I would say there is no clear direct path, but just from life experiences and knowing the importance of fathers, knowing the contributions fathers make, and more importantly, knowing the importance of bringing fathers to the forefront and bringing fathers outside of the margins to the center of families. Because if we're collectively interested in strengthening children and families, there's no way we cannot include fathers. And so throughout the years, that's how the work has involved, just the passion, knowing the importance of fathers, knowing the significance that fathers have in the lives of children and families in our communities, and identifying ways to bring that passion and work to the forefront.
Mm. Dr. Lemmons?
I would say for me, it's a couple of things. So, one of my first jobs out of my master's program was working in inner city Washington, D.C. as an aftercare slash after school program coordinator. And nearly all of the youth that I worked with at that time did not have a present father living in the home. Now, that's not to say that their fathers were not involved, but many of them didn't have that consistent presence of a father in their lives. And I saw the impact that had on the work that I did with them and their families. So that has inspired a lot of my work, in addition to my own lived experiences. My parents divorced when I was 17. And prior to that happening, my father was there in my life every day, and always had a very positive relationship with him. But there was a very brief snapshot moment in my life where my father wasn't there,
Mm.
due to my parents' divorce. And so I got to feel for a very brief moment in my life what it might feel like to have not had a father present. And so I can kind of relate, to children on both sides of the coin of having a father there and also not having a father there as well. And so through that experience, I came to learn and understand the value of a father in the lives of their children. I would not be the woman that I am today if it were not for my father. And I, very proudly say that, and will be the first to say that my father was um, very nurturing, growing up, and very caring, and took on a lot of the roles that many folks associate with mothers. And so, I've always been very grateful and have expressed a lot of gratitude for all that my father poured into me. So, of course, his life inspires a lot of my work, and is the best way that I can see to honor him in my everyday life.
Thank you for that. I want to stay with you for a moment because I want to kind of walk down this path just for a little bit before we get into the book and before we get into the research conversation. You founded the Black Female Fatherhood Scholars Network. And it's, what I love about this conversation today is because throughout my career in this specific work, there has always been a question of whether or not women could function within the responsible fatherhood field and work. Obviously, you three have proven, hell yeah, we can do it and we can do it well, right? But why did you create the network? Because it seems like there was another impetus for you to begin to think about being able to pool that together to be able to engage in this work.
Sure. So I started the network in 2020, right in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, and had already been doing some really great work with Black women in the field, but had not really formalized the work that we were doing. We were doing a lot of it sort of under the radar. And I knew so many Black women that were doing great work in this area, and so I really wanted to make it a thing. I wanted to bring it out there, put it on the forefront, that yes, we are Black women. No, we are not men, but we are doing this work. And I, really wanted to create a space and a sense of community for women who are doing this work, because oftentimes we are questioned about how how do we know, or what do we know rather, about fatherhood? Can we do this work effectively as women? And so I really wanted to create a space for women to do this work unapologetically and be in community with other women that just get it, that just understand what it means to be a woman in this field, and to give what voice to that. And so that's a lot of the reason why I created this.
Hmm.
Network.
Thank you. And Dr. Rollins, outside of your work with the Morehouse School of Medicine, you're also the director of the National African American Child and Family Research Center. And working with you, what I know is you made a very specific and intentional focus to ensure that fathers were a part of this broader narrative around child and family. What has been some of the difficulties in you doing that within the perspective of talking about family, trying to ensure that fathers remain part of that conversation?
Yeah, I think the difficulty is because the programs that we are focusing on typically don't include dads. So we have to focus on the temporary assistance for needy families program, Head Start, Early Head Start, and child care assistance programs. These programs all are trying and are challenged with engaging fathers. And it is really, you know, due to their start, right? It was like you're not supposed to have a man in the home as it relates to TANF and temporary assistance for needy families. So now it's saying engage them back, and so it's like this history of mistrust with these various programs, and now it's like we want to engage you, and the dads are like, oh, I don't know. So there's that challenge of the history of these programs and just kind of the lack of utilization or participation by fathers in them. And so we're trying to bring to the attention to the programs that you need to make sure that you want to acknowledge this history and the reason why you may be receiving some pushback or resistance from dads engaging, but also embrace that there are strengths, that there are resources, there are other ways to make sure that you are serving the whole family in this regard. And so being able to bring some of that, their perspectives through the data that we have collected in community, bringing their perspectives, bringing their not only the challenges that they have, but some of the solutions, some of the things that they say would work, what would work best for them to be engaged, because we know throughout those programs, the early childhood stage, whether it is, when the kids are in school and need childcare and those types of things, whether we're thinking about economic mobility, dads are all throughout those various areas and need to be engaged in those spaces. So how can we best engage them using the research center to shed some light on those issues?
And Dr. Austin, you've cut your teeth in the early beginnings of your career in social work. And so when we look at the space of social work, we know what the makeup looks like. And so there's always been this challenge on what has to happen in the space of social work to kind of even out not only the scholars and the academians and the service providers in the field that tend to be mostly female. What does it look like in our schools of social work when we're not even talking to our emerging scholars and emerging practitioners about fatherhood? What were some of the challenges being a social worker that you've now brought into your research space that you're attempting at tackling?
Absolutely. So I think one of the main challenges is what you had just addressed. In many social work programs, there is not a focus on engaging fathers. As a result, many social workers are preparing professionally, but they're not preparing to learn or understand how to engage fathers within the family process. And so that itself is problematic, because if we're talking about the context of families and we're talking about the context of strengthening children and families, there is no family without a father or father figure involved. And so it's very important to not only, one, provide social work professionals who are coming through the system with training, but also to make sure that they are culturally competent as well, because we know that families are diverse, and we know that an understanding of cultural competence is needed in order to not only work with families, but to make sure families are supported and thriving. So those are some challenges that I found. Other challenges that I found is there's not, as Latrice, Dr. Rollins indicated earlier, there's not a father-friendly context or a father-friendly environment that specifically focuses on fathers and says, you know what, we need to make sure fathers are centered in the margins. We need to make sure we give voice to fathers. We make to make sure that we have equitable resources for fathers. We need to make sure that we're providing fathers with the same exact resources that we're providing with mothers, so that fathers, mothers, and families can collectively thrive. So ultimately, those are the few of the challenges. The fact that some professionals are not trained to, one, engage fathers, and some also are not provided with that foundation of cultural competence which is needed. And there's not a focus on, in many places, an intentional focus on creating father-friendly environments, father-friendly policies, father-friendly practices, and father-friendly conversations to ensure that we're intentional about not only showing the contributions that fathers make, but also making sure fathers have the resources to thrive and to just to be great in the lives of their children and families.
So my good friend Dr. David Miller, who I've been connected by the hip probably for close to 20 years now, has always drilled in my head, Kenny, if it ain't on paper, it doesn't exist. And so the book, like, why was it important to first of all, think about writing a book, right? Because we just don't get there. And then actually writing this book, like, talk about that process from the perspective of all three of you. Why is this book so important for the field and for the space that we work in? Anyone? Go for it.
I can jump out. I can jump in and just say, and I'll let Dr. Austin speak mostly to this because she is the reason why we have this book. But I will start by saying, even starting with the title itself, we were very intentional about including as the subtitle, Defying Stereotypes and Amplifying Strengths. And I had the privilege and honor of writing the preface for the book. And a lot of what I say in the preface is just the fact that for so long, we have had these deficit narratives about Black fathers. And so, really, this book is a testament to celebrating Black fathers, the strengths of Black fathers. With every page in the book, we take this as an opportunity to defy stereotypes and to amplify the strengths, and that is one of our pillars as the Black Female Fatherhood Scholars Network, is strengths. That is one of our focal points, and we're very intentional about including that language in all that we do, because we want to always put that to the forefront, that we are a network that is intentional about uplifting and celebrating what Black fathers are doing right and not what they are doing wrong. And so we really wanted this to be a collective effort, for us to come together as Black women in this field and put forth our knowledge, our skills, our talents, our abilities in a way that allows us to say to the world that we are standing in solidarity with Black fathers and Black families.
Thank you. Dr. Alston, you sitting in the lab, and I'm sure your mind is going, you're like, we need a book. I'm writing a book. Like talk to me about that moment that you was like, we need a book, and you went from that moment to this moment.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, as Dr. Rollins and Dr. Lemmons indicated, our work is purposeful and intentional, and not only showing the contributions that Black fathers make, but in showing the contributions Black males make to society, to communities, to families, and really challenging the unfortunately master deficient narrative that seems to persist throughout American society. So, our role and our responsibility is to challenge that narrative. So, this book came about because we know the work that we're doing in the network, and it was important for us to work together collectively to show what better individual to support a Black man and a Black father than a Black woman. And if we're Black females, Black women, Black scholars collectively doing this work, we not only have a responsibility, but it is our passion to make sure that we're supporting Black fathers. More importantly, to make sure that we're, in a sense, what's the word I'm looking for? To make sure that we're moving this work forward in the way that the world can see the work, in a way that the world understands the contribution to Black fathers, in a way that the world knows that the narrative that persists is not true. The true narrative is Black fathers are engaged, Black fathers are involved, Black fathers want to be involved, and Black fathers play a very important and significant role in the lives of their children and families. So this book came about in just thinking of how can we collectively work together to bring all of our areas of expertise together to make sure that we are advancing the work of fatherhood, specifically the work of Black fatherhood, and to show that Black females work together to support Black men, right? To love Black men, to show the contributions of Black men. And what better way for us to do this than through the network as a collective? And that's how it all came about.
That's how the soup was made, huh? That's how the soup was
That's
made.
how it was made.
When you guys were writing, and I'm sure editing this book, right? Because editing it means that you had to go through this thing with a fine-tooth comb and look at people's ideas and ideologies and all those kinds of things. Dr. Rollins, were there moments when you were reading and editing, for the three of you, I want you to ask this question, that you read something and it was an epiphany point? It was like, wow, I never thought about that way before, or I never thought about that. Was there anything in the book that surprised you?
It would have to be with my own chapter. No, not by myself, but so I, co-authored the chapter with some colleagues. I call them my partners in purpose here in Atlanta, some other dads and other community partners. And one of the co-authors put the relationship between community and researchers as almost like a parent child relationship in some instances. And I was like, I hadn't really thought of it that way. And he would say, not in a power dynamic kind of way, but in a nurturing kind of way, in a facilitative kind of way. And I was like, oh, okay, I can see that as a bit of as a researcher who is bringing on community members to be a part of a research process that is academic in most senses, but nurturing them through to encourage them. Listen, you have something to contribute to this space. You have something to contribute in terms of your expertise that is going to make this project better. Similar to maybe how a parent may nurture a child throughout, their processes. So I was like, well, that's interesting. And he was like, you can take it out if you if you think it's too weird. And I was like, let's leave it. Let's leave it. Let's see how
Yeah,
it
make
goes.
people think. Make people think a little bit. Dr. Lemmons, how about for you? Anything shocked you? Anything surprised you?
I think for me, writing the chapter, working on the chapter, what we looked at, it's entitled "The Marathon Continues," and we looked at a lot of different ways that uh, government systems have impacted fatherhood and Black families over
Mhm,
time. And I think for me, I've known about a lot of things, but we really dug deep, like way, way, way back into the history,
mhm,
looking at chain gangs and the crack epidemic and the war on drugs, and just kind of seeing how all of these things have evolved throughout history. And really, indeed, it has truly been a marathon in many, many ways. And so I think it wasn't surprising. I've known about some of these things, but I think just really digging deep into the history in writing that chapter really brought to the forefront for me a lot of things, and why this work is important, why it's needed, why we need to continue on this trajectory. It just really put a lot of things into perspective for me in working on that chapter in particular.
mhm. How about you, Dr. Austin?
I would say, as it relates to maybe some epiphanies, is really acknowledging the contributions of community leaders in the work of fatherhood and really bringing that to the forefront. This work can't be done in silos. And so it's important to make sure that you have collaborations with community leaders, with community organizations, and make sure that you are partnering with community leaders and community organizations within the work. I also think that it's very important to bring the work outside of academia and to the community in a way that individuals can understand and in a way that provide them with strategies that they can actually implement into their lives or implement into their work so that we're all collectively advancing this work and not working in silos. I think that each individual, each organization, each leader has their sphere of influence, and if we're all working together collectively, then we're able to impact these spheres of influence that support fatherhood and advance fathers. So, what I would like to bring to the forefront, an epiphany that I've known, but it just really came to the forefront, is involved in this in both chapters that I worked on, chapter 4 and chapter 7, was working with community leaders and really bringing their perspective to the forefront and really bringing how they work and how they navigate and how they advance the work of fatherhood in their own work in different ways. And so for me, that was just extremely powerful, just seeing that the power of collaborations and the power of working together and the power of different perspectives and different voices coming together to support fatherhood.
Hmm. The responsible fatherhood space, I say this all the time, particularly when I'm in spaces that aren't familiar with this work, and in many spaces don't even know that this work exists, right? Like I walk into spaces and I say I work within fatherhood and they look at me like I have like three heads. And it's like, what is that space? And so I have a concern, and it has always been my concern about the infrastructure of the field, right? There is so much to be done. And
Mhm.
many people want us to be monolithic. They want us to do everything. And primarily they just want everybody to be direct service workers. That's what they want everybody to do. Like they don't think that we're capable of looking at infrastructure, looking at organizational development, looking at research, looking at fundraising, looking at business structure, all of the other things that will make this field where it will put this field where it should be. Is there anything in the research space that frustrates you right now with respect to being able to do the work you do and advancing it in a way that is beneficial for everybody who uses it?
Yeah, for sure. I think just the fact that we have to keep on saying fathers matter,
Mhm.
the fact that we have to keep on putting out these perspectives and stories to demonstrate the impact, demonstrate the importance, and still, like you said, you can walk into a room and people are like, "Oh, I never thought about that," or I didn't hear about that," or "I didn't know." And it's like,
How did you? Wow.
what are we
Mhm.
doing? Like, what are we doing? And so, really trying to think creatively about how we disseminate what we do. Um, and I think to Dr. Alston's point, making sure that we are working across sectors and really collaborating, making sure that in spaces where you might get a lot of those questions of, "Oh, we hadn't thought about that we're in those spaces, so that it can start to permeate a little bit more, because I hear all the time, yeah, we have been talking about fathers for, you know, since I started, being a practitioner, 30, folks are saying 30, 40 years ago, we were talking about the importance of engaging fathers, but we still have to talk about it because they're still not doing it.
Right.
So that's my frustration as a social worker now, researcher, that translation from research to practice. That's I'm comfortable with working myself out of a job. I want to work myself out of a job to where these dads are able to get equal access, be seen as, just as important as any other caregiver for a child. And so, but it's frustrating, and you have to
Mhm.
keep on saying the same thing, and people act like, "Oh, I never heard that before."
Right. Wow. Dr. Lemons?
I would say probably the lack of funding when it comes to fatherhood work. Although I will say that Dr. Rollins has been very creative
Yes.
in finding the money to do fatherhood work. She is our best example of how to turn any research grant into a fatherhood. She's going to find that fatherhood angle in that grant somewhere. Uh, so, she has definitely been our leader in that regard. But when it comes to just a commitment from funders in supporting this work, it's just not there. And so I think that's a big frustration for me when it comes to being able to find that support to do this work. I think too, we're still in a lot of ways very siloed in our work in the fatherhood field, even though we know intuitively that this work is very interdisciplinary and that it takes all of us to do this work, not just social workers or not just those in the family and child and family studies area or psychology or sociology. And that's one of the things that we try to do through the network is to bring all of our various disciplines together and at the table. And that's really helped me to see fatherhood in a different way, because in the network, we're from public health, we're psychology, sociology, marriage and family therapy, social work. We come from so many different professions and disciplines. And so that has been very transformative in my work. But I think on a broader scale, most folks are not really thinking in that way. They're just kind of working in these silos. And a lot of it is out of necessity, especially if you're in the academic world, where it really is about, getting the publications done and being on a tenure track or on a timeline, where you have to produce work in a certain amount of time. And I think that is our enemy in a lot of ways when it comes to this work, because folks become so focused on trying to meet certain requirements in academia that they're not really focused on that creative thinking and that creative work that is needed in order to advance the field. And so I think that is kind of another one of my frustrations, is that because we're pulled in so many different directions in academia, it is very hard to really think about and put in the thought and the time that's necessary for being creative in this work and innovative and thinking of new ways to approach this work. Everybody is just stretched so thin and pulled in so many different directions and under so many different demands at their respective institutions that it's hard to do the collective work that really needs to be done.
Wow. How about you, Dr. Austin?
I definitely concur. I believe that the frustration is, after all this time, we're still working to make advancements in the field of fatherhood. And so we know that although there have been advancements made, there's still a lot of work to be done. So we continue to do the work, continue to, again, make those collaborations, because, again, this work cannot be done in silos. And not only can it not be done in silos, but as Dr. Rollins and Dr. Lemmons indicated, support is needed to do this work. And so oftentimes funders are sometimes focused on fatherhood, other times not focused, just depending on what's happening in society. So what we need is a commitment to funding fatherhood research to make sure that we can continuously advance this work, and to make sure that, again, fatherhood is centered. Because if we're talking about strengthening families, if we're talking about children, if we're talking about communities, there's no way we can have these conversations without fathers being a part of the conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there must be a commitment, a focus, and intention about engaging fathers, both in research and also as it relates to funding.
You know, I'm looking at the time and we getting towards the end, and I'm like, man, I got like so much stuff to talk to them about. We definitely gonna have to come back, because I don't want to leave anything on the table, but I definitely don't want to walk away without talking about this particular thing. And that is, we're in a weird space now, right? Societally, you know, where we're looking at the erosion of DEI efforts, the erasing and somewhat eliminating of culture, right? And race. And it has made it very difficult for folks who are in spaces where we are working specifically with Black communities, Black families, Black dads, Black moms, and Black children, to figure out how to position ourselves so that we can continue to function and move forward without being canceled. And what I would like to hear from the three of you, particularly from you, Dr. Rollins, from the lenses of being within an HBCU, and you, Dr. Alston and Dr. Lemmons, from not being in an HBCU, have you felt any of those pressures to kind of figure out, can I continue to say I got a book on Black fatherhood? Can I continue to say I'm working with the Black community? Can I continue to say I'm concerned with Black moms? Can I continue to say that and look for the support of your institutions, who may feel a certain way about getting into these spaces because they don't want the consequence of being canceled? And from an HBCU perspective, which is, we're really not sure where to sit and where to go right now, because we're also concerned about where our resources are coming from. Are you guys feeling that at any level right now? And I'm not even going to ask you if you come to a solution, because we got to come back to talk about that, but at least talk about how it feels in this current place we're in now.
So, having attended an HBCU and now working at an HBCU, I can say I'm so glad I go to an HBCU. I work at an HBCU. My, I am just glad, because listen, we are not surrendering. We are not turning back. We are committed to our mission and vision. We are not going to stop saying we're increasing diversity in our workforce. We're not going to stop saying that we're working with Black students, we're working with Black communities. And it just helps that we're in Atlanta, right? So I don't even have to say in my
Right.
title, I'm working with Black blah, 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 because my participants are going to be Black men, Black women, Black children. It's just going to be because of where I am. And I can, continue to work in various spaces, whether it's rural communities, whether I want to work in Mississippi, Louisiana, what, I could just be very strategic where I'm going to work. And I don't have to say. But the other side of that is, too, like I said in the beginning, we haven't said, well, we're not going to say we're not working with, this population or that. I mean, we're going to continue to press on. We're going to continue to talk about the work for those, particularly for populations that are marginalized, populations that are overburdened, and need various resources, services, need various attention. There's a number of different ways you can frame that message or whatever to make it clear. Regardless, this work needs to be done, and the work that is being done not only benefits this population that we're focusing on, but all populations. If we can get it right here, know it's going to be a benefit to all. And so I sympathize with my sisters who and brothers who are at PWIs where there may be some pulling back of things and maybe some tempering of the commentary and things, but I'm so glad I'm in the A and I work at an HBCU.
Sorry, y'all that don't live in Atlanta. Come on home. We leave the light on for you. Come on down. Come on down.
Well, for me, I mean, I am not currently at an HBCU. However, my roots are at HBCU. So Dr. Rollins and I both attended Spelman College. And I also attended Howard University. So I bring those roots with me wherever I go. And so I am just unapologetically Black. And Dr. Rollins always reminds us to be unapologetically Black too. Because everything we do with her, we got Black music playing in the background. We got, all the things. So she always reminds us to stay Black. So I
I
appreciate
can't
her
do
for
nothing
that.
else. I can't
Yes,
do nothing else.
yes, yes.
That.
So I appreciate her for that. But I will say that I, carry that with me. Having attended HBCUs always has shaped me in such a significant way, in a transformative way. And so I happen to be at Baylor, and they know, that I am unapologetically Black, and they accept that about me, and they support me in that. And my dean is very supportive of the work that I do. So I'm not in a place where they are asking me to scale back on any of the work that I'm doing, and they are not scaling back either. We continue with our efforts toward diversity, equity, and inclusion. We might be a bit more creative in how we frame that work, but we are still continuing to do that work unapologetically, even in our context. And so, and then having the network also as a source of support and encouragement in validation of why this work needs to continue. I think has been important for me in my journey and has helped me to minimize a lot of the frustrations that I might otherwise feel. When I do feel those moments of, does this work matter? Can I continue to do this work? I just look to the network, and they are constant reminders to me and for me of my need to keep moving forward.
Dr. Austin, you know where we escape from. So.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, Mr. Braswell and I go way back to Troy and Albany, New York. I'm originally from Troy, New York. So, yes, indeed, we have come a long ways, a long, long ways. So, I think when I'm thinking about this work and I think about where I am at this time, I have the privilege of having a diverse background in going to Siena for undergrad, but going to Clark Atlanta University for my master's, where we find a way to make one, and then going to the University of Georgia, where Latrice also attended for our PhD. And so that perspective, I am always unapologetically Black. As you know, Troy Albany is blackity black black. And so unapologetically Black and being unashamed and saying, no, this is the work that we do. This is what we bring. We're supporting our communities, and we're doing health research and supporting our communities. So bringing the contributions to the work that we're doing, knowing that regardless of what happens in the larger context, we remain true to ourselves and remain true to our North Star of making sure that we're supporting our community, supporting families, and supporting children, and doing health research that supports society as a whole. And so we advance with that discussion, advance with that work, advance with that conversation, and know that although we may have to pivot, although we may have to change, this is not the first time we've been here. We've been here before as a people, but we as a people will always, always continue to progress, always continue to push on, always continue to find a way or make one, and always continue to make sure that we are continuously supporting and uplifting each other. And I think that is the foundation that fortifies the work that we do.
Yeah, I think that moving forward, we have to be very intentional about having more conversations about the sustainability of the infrastructure, so that when we meet these moments in strength and not in weakness. And we're not running scared, trying to figure out how we're going to code switch in order to be able to sustain what little bit you have. In a fortunate way and an unfortunate way for the responsible fatherhood field, the federal government is this major funder. And that's a shame, because foundations should be playing more of a role, and individual community donations and investment into this work should be greater. That's a conversation for a whole nother conversation. But here we are, right? And so how do we ensure that those of us who are doing this work in the municipalities and communities that they're in are going to find themselves still doing this, given that the new round of responsible fatherhood grants are about ready to drop, and there is a lot of language that is going to be almost barred from being spoken to in the language. So how do you, Dr. Alston, from a Troy, Albany, Schenectady, speak about the community you want to serve without identifying what that community is? It is the beauty, as Dr. Rollins said, about being in Atlanta. I ain't got to say nothing. It is what it is when we hear. But that is, to me, is going to be a challenge, and people are going to fall through the cracks because they're not going to be able to speak to a smaller population of a larger population to define that this work is important for this particular area. But these conversations we should have been having 4 years ago, not now. Right? Because we fell asleep and we thought that this was all that way was going to always be the way. And now we're in culture shock that no, y'all need to get your butts out and have conversations about these other things in the spaces where you're comfortable in talking, because that way ain't always going to last. But I'm glad we are where we are. I'm glad you guys are doing what you're doing. I do think that the field, that there's an element of the responsible fatherhood field that has stepped up. There is still an element that hasn't moved, but there's an element that I have clearly seen that has stepped up, and we've gotten a little smarter about the work that we're doing. We used to complain about the lack of research. There is more research there. I've seen more Black men and women entering into the space of research with respect to family, but more specific to fatherhood, because I get these things all the time. Could I send this and reach out $25 gift certificates? Like, listen, no. First of all, you can't talk to my people unless it's $200. You're not taking up my people's time for $25. I need y'all to get to that space to be able to like really respect the stories and the things that people are going to, they're not typically going to make $200 in an hour in any job that they're getting, but what you're asking for is worth more than what you are offering. And we need to change the paradigm with respect to that kind of stuff. Why should people have this? Why should this be a must-have in every library, in every organization that is working specifically with Black fathers? Why should they have this book? And they should not end this conversation without going to that link and purchasing this book.
I'll let our lead editor answer that.
So I was trying to see who's going to go first. So I definitely think that this book is a necessity. We understand the times we're in right now. We understand the climate that we're in. We understand the need to advance the narrative on Black fathers and Black families. We understand the need to not only advance the narrative, but to make sure that we're working together collectively to make sure we have a strong foundation and that we are not erased. As a result, this book not only provides strategies, it gives insight into the work that we're doing, not only as Black women, but also the work that Black fathers are doing within communities across the nation to make sure that their contributions are known. So this book is a must-have because it shows the strengths of Black families and shows the strength of Black fathers, shows the strengths of Black males, and it challenges the narrative that says Black fathers are not involved, Black males are not involved, because the true narrative is that Black fathers and Black males are involved, engaged, and want to be engaged and play a significant and important role in their families and the lives of their children and in their communities.
And I'll add to that really quickly by saying Kenneth, you brought up earlier, the fact that, and I can speak to the social work profession in particular, that the workforce for social work is predominantly female.
Mhm.
And in our programs, unfortunately, our social work programs, we don't have this content. This content is often missing from our textbooks. And so this is an opportunity to fill that gap by having this resource on hand, particularly for social workers or any helping professional that's working directly with Black fathers and families. They're just not getting this content. And that's one of my gripes and one of my frustrations with my profession in particular, is that we're making a lot of assumptions about what our students know or don't know about how to work effectively with men and fathers. And so we need more resources like this that can help fill in the gaps in our curriculum. And I think at some point as a profession, we have to be honest that we are not properly equipping our students to work with men and fathers in the way that we should be. And that is a grave error on our part and actually an ethical dilemma on our part. And so I think that this work can help to fill in the gaps where we are not doing what we need to do and not serving fathers well in our programs.
Dr. Rollins?
Yeah. The only other thing that I'll add is while this book does challenge the deficit narrative and stereotypes, particularly of Black fathers, it also challenges a narrative about women and men. And so by showing a number of scholars coming forward, Black female scholars coming forward and saying, here are the strengths of dads across a number of topics. So this is talking about relationships, it's talking about community, it's talking about health, how to conduct research together, how to, work through the prenatal period together, like a whole number of topics. But these are Black women coming forward with some of the chapters with men saying, this is important. We want to show collective, unified voices saying dads are important. So I think it offers that different perspective as well.
Yeah, I was going to not bring up another subject matter, but I think I don't want to close this without bringing this up because I do think that it's important to the conversation that we're having. But give me one idea. We can go into a whole another hour conversation about this, but I think it's important just to bring up. And that is, how do we begin to... So I've always been and continue to be 10 toes down when it comes to talking about fatherhood, which I never let people dilute the conversation that I'm having, right? I'm talking about fathers. I'm talking about fathers. I'm talking about fathers. You talk about whatever else you want to talk about, but I'm talking about fathers. Because I believe that once you start diluting the conversation, then you start forgetting about fathers, right? It's why when people say, well, for the Million Father March, we're going to invite dads and mentors. No, we're not. We're going to invite dads. If a father or a man feels like he is in a father position, he is going to come no matter what you call him. But we don't have to terminology it out so that he feels comfortable in coming. He's going to come whether, because if you start spreading the conversation, now all of a sudden, well, how come moms can't come? How come aunties can't come? Because they serve in father. It gets crazy. So it's like, keep it focused. But how can we get to a space, because I think that this is critically important for both Black men, Black women, Black moms, Black dads, that we have to be able to support the issues of each other without it being a zero-sum game, meaning that I can't be a supporter of what you are trying to strive to get and leave mine at the table. Like, it has to be one for one in terms of, if I'm going to support you 10 toes down, you have to support me 10 toes down. If I'm going to talk to you, if I'm going to talk about you in rooms that you're not there, you got to talk about my issues in rooms that I'm not there. I think that that is the next challenge for Black men and Black women, to kind of figure out, how do we start gathering in the same rooms as opposed to different rooms having two different conversations. And that's necessary. I don't say that we to stop doing that, but we haven't gotten to the space where we're able to take the two conversations, bring them in the same room, and figure out how we're going to have a more holistic conversation that gets us closer to family solutions and not just co-parenting solutions, if that makes sense.
It does. It's one of my pet peeves. The constant siloing, the constant separation when we're talking about families, when we're talking about communities. We don't live that way. We don't live with only talking about the children, only talking about mom, only talking about dad, like it's all together. Everything is all together. This is a family system, right? And so it is a challenge for us as Black women, advocating for fathers because then they feel like, well, we're against mothers. No, I'm a
Oh,
mother. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I'm invested in my own health and the health of my sister. I'm also invested in the health of my son and my husband, my dad. It doesn't have to be, like you said, one against the other, or these are mutually exclusive ideas, right? They can't coexist. So it is a challenge. I think that it is just the way that our systems are designed. It's the way that a lot of programs are even designed to be separate. And so I welcome this new conversation around whole families and two gen approaches and all of those things that are more natural anyway than the way some of the systems are designed. And so I think it is just a need to reimagine, a need to kind of buck against some of the kind of ways that we have unfortunately become comfortable. And a lot of things are fear too. There's a fear of, oh yeah, I have these services for moms, but I'm afraid to invite the dads in because what if, they start arguing or they start, okay, like they argue at the house
right.
maybe, but it wouldn't it be good for them to argue here? So then you can intervene and you can get the stuff together. But it's like, no, 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 no conflict. We don't want to have dads with donuts day because, oh, mom is going to be upset because she can't come. Look, what are we
Right.
doing? So we gotta. It's a challenge that we have to, like you said, continue to work on where we can all come together, common vision, common focus, and stop being so separate and siloed.
Okay. Dr. Arthur.
And I'll just add to that really quickly and say that I think that the way that we need to approach this as a Black community has to look different than the status quo. In terms of we cannot afford as a Black community to be separated. We cannot afford to not have unity in our community. And there, sometimes we look outwardly and we want to sort of conform to, the standard that is the status quo, not realizing that from slavery onward, our kinship ties, our proximity to one another, the way we relate to one another, that unity is what has kept us strong as Black families for ever.
Mhm.
And so that's something that we always have to keep at the forefront and remember when we have all of these uh, dominant frameworks that have never really served us well. When we have them come at us, we have to remember what we're made of. We have to remember our history. We have to go back and understand from whence we come
Mhm.
in order to develop our own strategies that are going to work for us and our families.
Right.
And we know that a part of our history, our heritage is collectivism,
Mm.
and coming together as one. And that has always been our strongest strength. That has always been our fortitude, what has given us grounding and foundation. And so I think in a lot of ways, as a community, we have to go back to those roots,
Okay.
to that foundation.
Sounds good.
And I definitely agree. We have to move forward as a collective. We have to move forward united. We have to stay true to our core and to ourselves and know that we need each other. We need each other to survive. We need each other to thrive and to focus on us as a collective and how we can support each other. Because without each other, we fail.
Mm. There's back in the early 80s, late 70s, growing up in Brooklyn, there was a time where both brothers and sisters, more brothers than sisters, used to gather on the corner and have ciphers. And they would cipher over scholarly books right? From Dr. Naeem Akbar and Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu and Dr. Cornel West. And they would read these things and they would debate these conversations on the corner and in the barbershop. And we've gotten away from having conversations about our brilliant Black scholars. And somehow we got to find a way to bring that back, where the conversation in barbershops and beauty salons are about this. They're pulling it up and they're debating and they're having conversations based on real information from the brightest minds in our community and culture that's talking about this. I don't know how that happens, but every time I think about it and I see a book like this, I'm like, man, I remember sitting at home at night, reading The Civilization of African-American Slaves, like reading, because I knew when I went to the corner, somebody was going to drop some knowledge that Dr. Ben Johannan said or Dr. Hakeem Adibouti said, and I needed to know what chapter, what page, where it was going to be at, and I had to have my stuff right. And we don't do that anymore. The book is called Health, Parenting, and Community Perspectives on Black Fatherhood, Defying Stereotypes and Amplifying Strengths, edited by Dr. Tasha L. Alston, Dr. Brianna P. Lemmons, and Dr. Latrice L. Rollins. Make sure you get it. It's going to be on our website. It's going to be on, it's actually in our newsletter with the link to the page where they can purchase the book. But Google it. You'll find them. You'll find the book, but make sure this needs to be part in all of the books that our brilliant brothers and sisters are writing right now. I get every book. I don't care who it is. If I find out that a Black researcher has written a book, many of them I've never read, I purchased it just because it has to be in my library. I never know when and so the cool thing I like about them is when I'm looking at the back, I'm like, oh, I know him. I know him. I know him. I open it up. I know him. I know her. I know him. I know her. And not like I just know them. Like they're in my Rolodex. They're on my phone. Like I can call these people. And that's what I believe we need to do. So thank you. Thank you for bringing the brilliant women that you are. Thank you for advancing and elevating the culture. And thank you for keeping men honest and keeping us focused, because we competing. You don't know it, but we watching y'all and we like, nah, we writing a book too. They got a book. We got to write a book. And so, but that's what we do, right? We do that to elevate the consciousness of the people that we're trying to serve. So thank you so much for joining I Am Dad podcast. And I'm always 1000% 20 toes down for the work that you're doing. You never have to do anything but pick up the phone and call me to find out how I can help you in the space of what you're doing. And to my I Am Dad podcast listeners, you know how I like to leave you. Always be kind to others as you're kind to yourself, or you might find yourself by yourself. Always shoot high for your goals, because even if you miss, you'll be amongst the stars. And as my good friend and mentor, Art Mitchell, used to always say to me, Kenny, you know what? It's nice to be important, but it's much more important to be nice. Until next Sunday, peace out.
Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us. You've been listening to I Am Dad podcast. We hope that you have been informed, encouraged you to think, or even inspired your heart for the love of dads. The conversation does not end here. Come back and join us next week. Same time, same place. Or you can continue the dialogue on our I Am Dad Facebook page. We also invite you to listen to past episodes, learn more about us, and keep up with special activities by visiting IamDadPodcast.com. That's IamDadPodcast.com. Until next time, I leave you with this reminder of manhood from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Because of this reminder, I will always understand that I am Dad, period.